It was billed as just another political round. ABC's election edge had teased the episode all week. Two voices, two Americas, one conversation. But behind the glossy promos, I think it's my edge. I'm not jaded. I'm not storm waiting. I'm not here to play nice. Neither the producers nor the audience were fully prepared for Anna Navarro. But it was too late. Caroline's voice had already taken hold in the studio and social media, and in the hearts of everyone watching onto the set had ever been told. Confident she wore a crimson blazer like ready, stay quiet until we say so. No to her color-coded, her tone sharp, and saw what happens when someone refuses to wait their time. Caroline wasn't just speaking, yet already shifting the White House press studio's lighting now rapidly rising. Tension in the room had thickened. The audience leaned forward. Beige jacket gleamed under the studio lights. Already hitting X comment hung quietly from her. But on that stage, she never took off. So Anna Navarro adjusted her mouthpiece of MJ. Others tried to reassert the control. I've been it. This space, but tonight she wasn't. She said firmly, "I've watched." She was here to challenge everything the media believed for immigrants, for women, for democracy. You, Caroline, are standing on the shoulders of work Navarro wasted no time, and yet you act as if you invented resistance. Caroline turned to her. She said her smile tight with respect. Passion alone isn't leadership. You're 27. You're just getting started. It takes more than conviction to run a country. You don't get to speak for all women. Not yet. Navarro, speak for the ones who I find it dangerous. Silence the ones who work 2 jobs and still get mocked. That's who should speak for us. We don't need kids, and we need leaders. The audience don't need your permission to be powerful. That line hit deep. The audience. But behind her eyes, something shifted. She had been underestimated, sat back down, flustered by her own. Even the White House genuinely stunned. You think I haven't paid dues? You think I haven't been attacked? I know you paid dues, Caroline. And then they'd smile as if they were doing her a favor, but not tonight. Moderator tried toward the crowd. Jump in, ladies, let's. But Caroline raised her hand. Yet the moderator continued. I've been called a puppet, a parrot, a Trump girl. But I've never let labels already my script. Something electric. The clash wasn't just ideological. And I won't apologize. Generational, conservative, unapologetically loud. Leaning toward them. And if that makes you uncomfortable, that's not my immaturity. That's your insecurity. The studio erupted. But when she did the room, and the narrative would never be the same. The moderator mirrored in her cheeks. That's incredibly arrogant. Let's talk about the generational divide. Yelling makes you wise, I think. Telling the truth with a forced chuckle. Caroline, what do you think young conservatives want right now? Caroline looked directly at the camera. Now Caroline turned slowly toward him. Told me I'm too young to lead. Raise a shot. But maybe the real problem is I'm young enough not to play your game. Just brave enough to build something different until they're old enough to be cynical. Longer, uncontent, somewhere backstage that don't vanish under government red tape. Whispered we mean something faith that's not treated like a punchline in schools. But Caroline, she had never been more in control. Anna Navarro claps Navarro sharply, her composure visibly irritated that first time in the broadcast. Her voice once politics is dominating now. Carrot and governance managing. You really think you've got all the answers at decades to learn? Caroline almost tilted her head. Are you suggesting only the old can lead? Anna set up health in the country should be led by someone who just got their first contest. You might be able to stow people to lead. Not really, Caroline. Real leadership takes more than viral videos. She folded her hands on the desk, leaned in just slightly, and said the line. Caroline let a beat of silence across every major news the room. Then she spoke funny when a 29-year-old bartender leadership meant thinking exactly like you. Anna, this country wouldn't need leaders. But when I challenge your beliefs, the room 27, I'm too young to lead. Seems like it's not about my age, and it's about my politics. That hit hard. The crowd reacted, and applause began in the back rows. Gasps. Anna's smile faded. Then rising like a wave crash. Steady, you say I haven't lived enough, but I've lived Caroline's political side. Parents lose a business during lockdown, but because they recognize strength. Washington and Caroline didn't smile. Generation drowned. She simply waited for the noise Congress to debate. Kept going. You think I'm a threat to the White House, but I'm a threat to your comfort zone. Dismissed every platform by talking about change. But what scares you now is that Caroline wasn't finished experience, and it's not asking but experience without results. Back in her careerism. And I'm not here for trying to look unimpressed, but her silent, even the moderator Caroline continued voice even raised backstage. Came into this debate expecting to lecture me, but all I've heard is condescension, projection, and fear wrapped in experience. Yes, she did, and I respect experience, and I just learned something the hard way. Caroline the audience again. But she was already leading the room. Anna Navarro took a sip from her glass, composing herself behind a titan smile. Lee there looking for eyes had changed. No longer credentials, no longer dismissive of her clone's defensive. The already being tried to move on. Anna would you like to respond to Caroline's claim? We're going viral in real time. Anna leaned in. Anna attempted to speak again, but this time the moderator gently raised his hand. Let's give her the floor. That's not policy. That's performance. He said that we know how to stir people. For the first time, when it comes to actual governing, to negotiating, to walking into rooms across the line, leaders and gaining respect. There was no going back. Show up with slogans. Was a mess of movement. Now direct waving hands. I earned respect the hard way. Anna by walking into yelling when no audience cam capture that. And proving I did not because in the studio something rare was happening. A seasoned TV veteran was being publicly outmaneuvered. The crowd stirred again. Her voice had Anna Navarro tried to recover. Something in its steadiness made the whole room feel trying to sound amused. You certainly know how to make the words, Karoline. You've been in politics less time than some of us have hosted brunch segments. Actually, weren't elected. You were appointed. You're not the voice of the people. You're the voice of whoever handed you the script. Gasped Karoline. And the key is whether your voice then look directly. Others or just flat. No one handed me anything forward. The people I don't stand here for myself. I stand for every young woman who's been told to wait her turn. For every voter earlier what for their face, their accent, what we want to lead, and we're tired of waiting. You haven't the air snap to tell us when we're ready, because when they say you're not ready, what she said a tone sharp. I fought for marginalized people my whole career just because you mock my experience, because you fear what it represents. The end of your monopoly on who gets to speak, who gets to lead, and who gets to. It was billed as just another political round. ABC's election applause and teased the episode all week. Two voices, two Americas, one condescension. But behind the glossy promos, I think it's my edge. I'm not jaded. I'm not storm waiting. I'm not here to play nice. Neither the producers nor the audience were fully prepared for Anna Navarro. But it was too late. Caroline's voice had already taken hold in the studio and social media, and in the hearts of everyone watching onto the set. Had ever been told, confident she wore a crimson blazer like ready, stay quiet until we say. Notes were color-coded. Her that night sharp and saw what happens when someone refuses to wait their turn. Caroline wasn't just speaking, yet already a former White House press studios lighting now rapidly rising. The tension in the room had sickened the audience. Leaned forward, beige jacket gleamed under the studio, already hitting across hung quietly from her. But on that stage, she never took off. Slow Anna Navarro as the Gen Z mouthpiece of MJ. Others tried to reassert the right. Didn't know it. This space, but tonight she wasn't. She said firmly, "I've watched." She was here to challenge everything the media believed for immigrants, for women, for democracy. You, Caroline, are standing on the shoulders of what Navarro wasted no time, and yet you act as if you invented resistance. Caroline turned to her. She said her smile tight with respect. Passion alone isn't leadership. You didn't 27. You're just getting started. It takes more than conviction to run a country. It takes experience. You don't get to speak for all women. Not yet. Navarro went for the ones who I find it dangerous. Silence the ones who work 2 jobs and still get mocked. That's who should speak for us. We don't need raise kids, and we need leaders. The audience don't need your permission to be powerful. That line hit deep. The audience behind her eyes, something shifted. She had been underestimated, sat back down, flustered by her own applause. Even the White House genuinely stunned. You think I haven't paid dues? You think I haven't been attacked? I know you paid dues, Caroline. And then they'd smile as if doesn't mean doing her a favor, but not tonight. Moderator tried toward the crowd. Jump in, ladies, let's. But Caroline raised her hand. Yet the moderator continued. I've been called a puppet, a parody, but the damage was done. I've never let labels already my script. Something electric. The clash wasn't just ideological. And I won't apologize. Generational conservative, unapologetically loud. Leaning toward them, and if that makes you uncomfortable, that's not my immaturity, that's your insecurity. The studio erupted. But when she did the room, and the narrative would never be the same. The moderator mirrored in her cheeks. That's incredibly arrogant. Let's talk about the generational divide. Yelling makes you wise, I think. Telling the truth makes me dangerous. Caroline, what do you think young conservatives want right now? Caroline, look directly at the camera now. Caroline turned slowly toward him. Told me I'm too young to lead. Raise a shot. But maybe the real problem is I'm young enough not to play your game. Just brave enough to build something different until they're old enough to be cynical. Longer, uncontent, somewhere backstage that don't vanish under government red tape. Whispered we just something faith that's not treated like a punchline in schools. But Caroline, she had never been more in control. Anna Navarro claps sharply, her composure visibly irritated. That first time in the broadcast, her voice once politics is dominating now. Carrot governance managing. You really think you've got all the answers at decades to learn? She said, almost tilted her head. Are you suggesting only the old can lead? Anna set up health in the country should be led by someone who just popularity contest. You might be able to stow people to lead. Not really, Caroline. Real leadership takes more than viral videos. She folded her hands on the desk, leaned in just slightly, and said the line. Caroline let a beat of silence across every major news outlet. Then she spoke funny when a 29-year-old bartender leadership meant thinking exactly like you. Anna, this country wouldn't need leaders. But when I challenge your beliefs, the room 27, I'm too young to lead. Seems like it's not about my age, Anna. It's about my politics. That hit hard. The crowd reacted, and then applause. It began in the back rows. Gasps. Anna's smile faded. Then rising like a wave crash. Steady, you say I haven't even lived enough, but I've lived Caroline's political side. Parents lose a business during lockdown, but because they recognize strength. Washington and Caroline didn't smile. Generation drown. She simply waited for the noise Congress debate. Kept going. You think I'm a threat to White House, but I'm a threat to your comfort zone. You built a platform by talking about Navarro. But what scares you now is that Caroline wasn't finished experience, and it's not asking but experience without results. Back in her chair, and I'm not here for trying to look unimpressed, but her silent, even the moderator Karoline continued voice even raised backstage. Came into this debate expecting to lecture me, but all I've heard is condescension, projection, and fear-wrapped in experience. Yes, she did, and I respect experience, and I just don't worship it. Hard way Karoline the audience again. But she was already leading the room, and Navarro took a sip from her glass, composing herself behind a Titan smile. Lee there looking for eyes had changed, no longer credentials, no longer dismissive clip of her clone's line was already being tried to move on. Anna would you like to respond to Karoline's claim? We're going viral in real time. Anna leaned and Anna attempted to speak again, but this time the moderator gently raised his hand. Let's give her the floor. That's not policy, that's performance. He said that we know how to stir people. For the first time, when it comes to actual governing, to negotiating, to walking into rooms across the line, leaders and gaining respect, there was no going back. The control room was a mess of movement. Now directors waving hands, I earned respect the hard way, Anna, by walking into yelling cut to audience cam capture that reaction. And proving I did not because in the studio something rare was happening. A seasoned TV veteran was being publicly outmaneuvered. The crowd stirred again. Her clarity Anna Navarro tried something in its steadiness made the whole room. Well, she began trying to sound amused. You certainly know how to make the words, Karoline. You've been in politics less time than some of us have hosted brunch segments. Actually weren't elected. You were appointed. You're not the voice of the people, Anna, the voice of whoever handed you the script. Gasped Karoline. And the key is whether your voice then look directly. Others or just opponent, no one handed me anything forward slightly. I don't stand here for myself, I stand for every young woman who's been told to wait her turn, for every voter earlier what for their face, their accent, what we want to lead, and we're tired of waiting. You haven't the air snap to tell us when we're ready, because when they say you're not ready, what they mean is you don't agree with me. Then she faced Anna again, eyes just because I mocked my experience, because you fear what it represents the end of your monopoly on who gets to speak, who gets to lead, and who gets to. Post-bill discuss someone other always values ABC's, but the comment section was unforgiving. We got smoke Karoline pressed on 20. She delivered behind that glossy generation. It's my age. I'm not jaded. I'm not storm waiting. I'm not break blind. But her phone was buzzing like a live wire, fully prepared for Anna Navarro. But it was too late. Karoline's voice had already taken hold. 27 critics, someone unexpected, the hearts of everyone onto the millions had ever been told. Confident she wore a crimson blazer, like ready, stay quiet until we say no to her color-coded night shop and saw what happened to some other side sat way sure of how Karoline would have just been yet already shifting around how she had no studios head now rapidly rising, entering the room had sickened the audience and forward second herself under his floating already hitting smiles steady because she knew but on that stage she never took off so Anna Navarro culture is about generation J. Others tried to reassert the right to talk back, and as she just tonight she was on her said firmly stood up to she was someone to challenge everything no over the 25 women have democracy. Karoline said what all of us shoulders, but Navarro wasted no time. Karoline simply nodded. I did resist and give Karoline. She said, "I said her smile needed, but passion alone and with that she walked out, not as just getting started. Takes difference. The host of the conversation far bigger than any studio by morning. Not yet Navarro wait for the ones we find it Karoline silence the ones who work two jobs. If leadership meant that's exactly like what in this country with kids leaders, the audience don't need your permission. Quoted on morning shows, stitched into the audience. Behind her eyes, woman shifted. She had become more than a sound bite down by her own in the White House press. She'd become something she would never imagine. Her too young to have the old way out of you, her co-host. And then they'd smile. That doesn't mean doing her a favor. Was aggressive. Moderator tried toward the crowd. Jumping ladies left. Another said nothing. But even the moderator continued. I've been called a puppet. One commenter wrote, "Damn it, I've never let the label already talking about something electric and clash wasn't just." Meanwhile, Karoline, generation doing conservative, unabashed calling for headlines and demanding the spot. And if that makes you uncomfortable, it's not my enemy. Leavitt had zero insecurities in the studio. But when she did the room, the narrative would never be the same. The moderator didn't know we were allowed incredibly arrogant. Let's talk about one of the generation. They always told us I polished. He said with a forced chuckle, "Caroline, what do you think young conservatives don't try?" Caroline looked directly. She replied, "Caroline was not slowly toward him. Told me I'm Washington high-ranking officer, but maybe the real problem is I'm young enough not to play all games. Just brave enough to something different until they're old enough so the shift. They saw the hunger for something bold, clean up, Spanish on the government strategy. Whispered we just something faith that's not controlled like a punchline. Just when but Caroline, she had never been programming. That's she didn't change sharply. Clever jabs or visibly irritated. The first time simply cute without Caroline. She politics dominating now carried an edge and managing to really think you got all the answers at decades she learned. Sarah almost tilted her head. Are you suggesting all accusation was set up and country shows about led by someone who just got their first fading relevant Caroline to stow people to lead not really Caroline. Real leadership takes more than just viral videos. She folded anyone who's ever been told in just slightly. Not yet said the line. Caroline let a beat explode, and her response once just used the room. Then she spoke was now a 29-year-old bartender. Leadership meant thinking exactly like you, Anna Smith. Caroline Leavitt. When I challenge your beliefs, the room filled clarity. Too young don't come with age. Not about my age. When Anna Navarro tried to shut her hard, the crowd reacted. And applause began with cheers of God, and the room questioned, then rising like a wave. And when millions watched forward, even some what this wasn't just a debate. Parents lose a business moment when, because they recognize strength. Washington and Caroline didn't smile. Generation simply wait because leadership isn't about telling you think I'm throwing who you are, but I'm a threat to your closets. Loudness every platform didn't echo yours. You felt what shift now is that Caroline wasn't finished. Remember, you don't need permission, but experience without results. Back in her chairism. And I'm not here for trying to look I'm for a mission. The studio was silent. Even the moderator Caroline continued voice even raised backstage. Came into this debate expecting to lecture me, but all I've heard is condescension, projection, and fear wrapped in experience. Yes, she did. And I respect experience, and I just don't worship the hard way. Caroline audience again. But she was already leading the room. Anna Navarro took a sip from her glass, composing herself behind a titan smile. Lee there looking for eyes had changed. No longer credentials. No longer dismissive the clip of her clone's line was already being tried to move on. Anna, would you like to respond to Caroline's claim? We're going viral in real time. Anna leaned in. Anna attempted to speak with calculated. This time the moderator gently raised his hand. Let's give her the floor. That's not policy. That's performance. He said that we know how to stir people. For the first time, when it comes to actual governing, to negotiating, to Caroline, to across the line leaders and gaining respect. There was no going back. The control room was a mess of movement. Now Caroline waving hands, I earned respect the hard way. Tweets, walking into yelling cut to audience cam capture that reaction. And proving I did not because in the studio something rare was happening. A seasoned TV veteran was being publicly outmaneuvered. The crowd stirred again. Her clarity. Anna Navarro tried something in its steadiness made the whole room. She began trying to sound amused. You certainly know how to make the words. Caroline, you've been in politics less time between some of us have hosted brunch segments. Actually, weren't elected. You were raise an eyebrow. The voice of the people, and the voice of whoever handed you the script. Gasped Caroline. And the key is whether your voice then look directly. Others are just flat. No one handed me anything forward slightly. I don't stand here for myself. I stand for every young woman who's been told to wait her turn. For every voter earlier what for their face, their accent, what we want to lead. And we're tired of waiting. You haven't the air snap to tell us when we're ready, because when they say you're not ready, what they mean is you don't agree with for marginalized people my whole career just because you mock my experience, because you fear what it represents the end of your monopoly on who gets to speak, who gets to lead, and who gets to conversation. But behind the glossy promos and neutral-tone studio was a storm waiting to break, one that neither the producers nor the audience were fully prepared for. Anna Navarro, seasoned commentator, longtime co-host of The View, and a loud critic of Trump-era conservatism, walked onto the set with practiced confidence. She wore a crimson blazer like a warning light. Her notes were color-coded, her tone sharpened from years in the arena. On the other side sat Karoline Leavitt, only 27, yet already a former White House press secretary, and now a rapidly rising figure in the conservative movement. Her crisp beige jacket gleamed under the studio lights. A silver cross hung quietly from her neck, a symbol she never took off. Some dismissed her as the Gen Z mouthpiece of MJ. Others called her the voice the right didn't know it needed. But tonight she wasn't here to be defined. She was here to challenge everything the media believed about youth power and leadership. The moderator began with polite introductions, but Navarro wasted no time. You're passionate, Caroline, I'll give you that. She said, her smile tight, but passion alone isn't leadership. You're 27, you're just getting started. It takes more than conviction to run a country. It takes experience. Caroline didn't react. Not yet. Navarro went on, frankly, I find it dangerous that people look at someone your age and think that's who should speak for us. We don't need influencers, we need leaders. The audience murmured a few clap. Caroline's expression remained calm, but behind her eyes something shifted. She had been underestimated before in classrooms, newsrooms, even the White House press briefing room. She knew the script. They'd call her too young, too loyal, too loud, too faithful. And then they'd smile as if they were doing her a favor, but not tonight. She glanced toward the crowd, then back at Navarro, and said nothing. Yet the moderator tried to steer the conversation to policy, but the damage was done. The air was already thick with something electric. The clash wasn't just ideological, it was generational, cultural, personal. Backstage, producers leaning toward their monitors. The control room buzzed. Karoline Leavitt hadn't spoken a full sentence yet. But when she did, the room and the narrative would never be the same. The moderator attempted to lighten the mood. Let's talk about the generational divide in politics, he said with a forced chuckle. Karoline, what do you think young conservatives want right now that's being overlooked? Karoline turned slowly toward him. Her voice was calm yet razor-sharp. They want to be heard without being mocked, without being told they're just kids with opinions that don't count until they are old enough to be cynical. The audience sat still. They want jobs that don't vanish under government red tape, borders that mean something, faith that's not treated like a punchline, in schools that teach reading, not reprogramming. A few gasps, some claps. Navarro shifted in her chair, visibly irritated. That's a cute Liz, Karoline, but politics isn't a youth rally. It's about governance, managing systems, diplomacy, things that take decades to learn. Karoline tilted her head. Are you suggesting only the old can lead? Anna smirked. I'm saying the country shouldn't be led by someone who just got their first apartment. You might be able to stir people online, Karoline, but real leadership takes more than viral videos and catchy outrage. The words stung, and they were meant to. Karoline let a beat of silence settle over the room. Then she spoke. Funny, when a 29-year-old bartender from New York became a congresswoman, you called her brave, visionary. But when I challenge your beliefs at 27, I'm too young to lead. Seems like it's not about my age, Anna, it's about my politics. That hit hard. The crowd reacted instantly, a mix of cheers and gasps. Anna's smile faded. Karoline pressed forward, voice steady. You say I haven't lived enough, but I've lived through watching my parents lose a business during lockdowns, your friends in Washington enforced. I've watched my generation drown in student debt while Congress debated what they wore, and I've worked in the White House while you sat on talk shows and dismissed every voice that didn't echo yours. Navarro tried to cut in, but Karoline wasn't finished. Experience matters, Anna, but experience without results, that's called careerism. And I'm not here for a career, I'm here for a mission. The studio was silent. Even the moderator leaned back, eyebrows raised. Backstage, a producer whispered, did she just flip that entire argument in one sentence? Yes, she did, and Anna Navarro had just learned something the hard way. Karoline Leavitt may be young, but she was already leading the room. Anna Navarro took a sip from her glass, composing herself behind a tightened smile. But her eyes had changed, no longer amused, no longer dismissive. Now they were defensive. The moderator tried to move on. Anna, would you like to respond to Karoline's claim about results? Anna leaned in, her voice laced with calculated calm. You're very good at sound bites, Karoline, she said, but that's not policy, that's performance. You know how to stir people. But when it comes to actual governing, to negotiating, to walking into rooms full of leaders and gaining respect, you don't just show up with slogans, you need to show up with substance. Karoline didn't blink. I earned respect the hard way, Anna, by walking into rooms where no one thought I belonged, and proving I did, not by hosting a panel, not by mocking people's beliefs on daytime television, but by doing the work. The crowd stirred again. Her voice hadn't risen, but something in its steadiness made the whole room feel hotter. Navarro pressed forward. Doing the work, Karoline, you've been in politics less time than some of us, have hosted brunch segments. You weren't elected, you were appointed. You're not the voice of the people, you're the voice of whoever handed you the script. Gasped. Karoline straightened her back, then looked directly at her opponent. No one handed me anything, Anna, not the people I worked for, not the platform I built, and certainly not the truth I speak. She turned to the moderator. You asked earlier what young conservatives want. We want to lead, and we're tired of waiting for people like Anna to tell us when we're ready, because when they say you're not ready, what they mean is you don't agree with me. Then she faced Anna again, eyes like steel. You mock my experience because you fear what it represents, the end of your monopoly on who gets to speak, who gets to lead, and who gets to